Welcome to all who have joined today. I appreciate the time that you're taking to participate in this webinar, and I want to deliver the best value that I can to you in the few minutes that we have together. I want to share with you that my webinar today will not just be presenting information to you. It's not only material that I want you to absorb today, but I'm going to get what some may consider to be a slow start. Because what I want to do is create an environment that creates critical thinking, that invokes emotion in the audience, so that when I get to the core content of the webinar, the presentation doesn't just end at the end of the 45 minutes or an hour, that the processing continues later today and throughout the week, etc., because the application of the material is what's going to be important, especially as we live in a very complex and seemingly increasingly chaotic world. So the first slide here, just a dark rectangle, the black box. I'm going to pause for a little bit. I want you to think, what do I see? And the longer you look at this, what are you feeling? Does anything about this black rectangle spur you to action? And if so, what type of action does it invoke in you? So here we have 4 different lines, and again, I'm going to ask you, what do you see? We have a line, but a line that's represented in different ways. Do the different representations change the meaning of the line for you? As an example, the first line is disconnected. The last line is solid. Does that mean it's strong? And it could represent two-way communication because there are arrows pointing to the right and another to the left. Do the lines stand alone? Are they mutually exclusive? Do they possibly build on one another? What is it that you see? So here we have darkness, and the light is starting to come up. Beautiful colors are starting to emerge. Also shapes in the sky, the clouds. What is to come? Is it the beginning of a new day filled with possibilities? Next slide, please. Upper left-hand corner, we have man, or a human being. And then machine and technology came into being. What emotion is stirred within you for each of the different pictures? Maybe each picture represents an inanimate object for you. I'm thinking that because you are human, at least one of the pictures connects with you at some level and invokes a thought or emotion. On January 28, 1986, there was a fatal accident when the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, killing all 7 crew members aboard. It was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight. Krista McAuliffe perished, bringing a sense of connection to many. She wasn't an astronaut. She was one of us, a teacher, a wife, a mother. Next slide, please. So what's next? No matter which generation you were born in, it's hard to deny that in the last 10 years, 5 years, or even the last 2 years, that the world is becoming more complex. Next slide, please. So here we go back to that picture that it was darkness and now the light is starting to come up. But in the lower left-hand corner, you see kids playing together, having fun, playing in the dark, or playing in the dirt. Just being kids. It's possible that many of you in the audience never played in the dirt with neighborhood friends, or after dinner, as I did when I was a kid. On a summer evening, played hide and seek until dark with the neighborhood kids, and then caught lightning bugs. It was a more simple, fun-filled life. And when I reflect on my own kids' childhoods, they were in before and after school programs, got picked up and then driven to soccer practice, and weekends were soccer games and tournaments, and they did not have a lot of downtime. Front porches became back decks. Technology advanced to where Zoom calls are not only used for work, but for church services and volunteer group meetings. Technology is integrated into our daily life, everyday life, everywhere. Next slide, please. So when kids could be kids, and we just played ball, we had we played hopscotch. The boys typically, possibly girls too, had their dump trucks. They played in the dirt. People got muddy. They weren't afraid to get dirty. There were friendships being made. There was creative play. The kids would talk to each other. They had fun. They adapted. Was there conflict? Sure, there was conflict. But they got over it as easily as they got into it. And there was collaboration. Very similar to what we think about now in the project world when we think about an agile methodology where we adapt, we collaborate. We want to get those creative juices talking. We have the continuous feedback loops. We talk, we're creative, we work through conflict. It's seen as a healthy engagement, not a negative. But every day as kids, we went back and we played again, doing the same thing in a different way, or even making up a new game. As humans, did we schedule ourselves to process and operate more as machines, where we do things bigger, better, faster to achieve not only goals, but stretch goals, thereby time-boxing ourselves into literally producing work? As we streamlined to become more efficient and effective, did we begin to lose our creativity and also our ability to connect and therefore relate to one another? Are you talking with people as much as you are using emoticons? Are you writing letters anymore? Even emails? Are you texting or IMing in as few words as possible? Or are you that rare individual today who is actually picking up the phone and having a conversation with someone? Does it matter even that conversations seem to be a dying form of communication? Think about that one. Conversations being a dying form of communication. Next slide, please. So we look at that top line that is a disconnected line, it's a dotted line, and we go to a solid line. We go to the third line is a solid line but heading in one direction. Last line is a solid line with the arrows on either end, which to me indicates bondedness. We're getting something done. We might be inventing and reinventing, maybe navigating complexity, solving for the greater good. And with camaraderie and fun comes intrinsic satisfaction, not only the extrinsic satisfaction of the reward, the paycheck, the work product. Next slide, please. So as the world advances, each industrial revolution has brought technological advances, but humans continue to have the same basic needs: to be in relationship, accept it, and to know they are valued and contributing to a greater good. Let me repeat that last part. Humans continue to have the same basic needs: to be in relationship, accept it, and to know they are valued and contributing to a greater good. And that very nature of being human and needing those things to be in relationship is what helps us navigate ambiguity and complexity in a gray, smushy world where everything is no longer black and white, but in this age of the fourth industrial revolution, there's more of a tendency to put us into boxes of the black and the white. Next slide, please. So communication as a means of messaging. We are no longer limited to only the human dimension. Computers, large mainframes, enable humans to process large amounts of data fast. Data analytics are advanced. Ads and news are targeted to populations at the individual level. AI has advanced. We chat, in quotes, with bots to answer questions online. Has anyone ever been online asking a simple question to a customer service rep? A rep that is actually a bot, and you get the response back: I don't understand your question, please ask it again. When you already asked it in the most simple way the first time, and frustration sets in. This may be a simple question, but you know that getting an answer will not be easy. So not only is communication are we trying to message out to communicate and receive messages in, but we have to start thinking about systems thinking as a means to solving large complex problems. So it's about the integration across disciplines, across different skill sets, integration of different fields of study, of disciplines, and it can be very complex. So next slide, please. How can I help you? Are your questions getting answered? The very basic elements of being human will never change, yet technology continues to advance. So what is the answer? It's a blend of how can technology make our lives better, but we will always need the human element to be creative and to navigate complexity. The human element is what binds us to one another and connects the dots where technology and machines cannot. Next slide, please. Team humans meet the future. Next slide, please. Human beings, as we've said, are designed to be relational and to foster connection, to love one another, to be joyful, to be peaceful, kind, and good towards each other, to accept one another, to demonstrate self-control, and to be compassionate. We also possess critical thinking skills, whereas technology performs repetitively and does the tedious work for us. It can process information in a bigger, better, and faster way. So we want to learn to coexist with technology, but that is a double-edged sword. The positives are that it helps us mass communicate, including socially. It connects us on Zoom calls to be able to do our jobs, as an example with the last 2 years in the pandemic. Computer programs help us to process data and to derive answers quickly. But what are the negatives? Bad data in, bad data out. Computers can't think for themselves. Technology platforms are inanimate. In and of themselves, they are only processors. And nefarious oversight can have damaging consequences to people, to companies, to countries. An example would be hackers and the dark web. Or what about our infrastructure, our grid, and possible cyber warfare? Next slide, please. So to avoid living under a dark technological cloud, let's connect. Next slide, please. So the art of relationship. Shake a hand, have that warm connection. See the smile of an elderly gentleman. Two kids are playing, or multiple kids are on the field playing soccer and kicking a ball, running together, working toward a common good. We have a couple giving a hug and enjoying one another and smiling because it's a warm, fuzzy feeling. And then on the lower left-hand side, we have a picture, possibly something from the Olympics, where there's a team that has worked together and clearly has won a medal and is successful in after being united and working together. And also at the same time having fun. Next slide, please. So we'll go back to this black rectangle and the disconnected line and our box here. Black and white, bits and bytes, right and wrong answers, not, quote, operating, unquote, in the gray space to navigate ambiguity. More just stick figures kind of marching in place with the data they've received and the data they're processing to give output. Where is the feedback loop where there's continuous communication and growth? There is only if there is human intervention. So is the relationship deepening as shared experiences are walked through together? It's not possible. That is the gap that humans need to continue to address and always will. It is a void that will continue to widen in a world led by technology. It is a void that will continue to widen. The gap will increase in a world led by technology and hidden behind its filters unless we as people rise to the occasion and intentionally continue to connect with each other. That is a gap that we intentionally and actively need to acknowledge and do something about. How often do you actually pick up the phone and talk to someone? Next slide, please. So here are some truths about human behavior. The last bullet is similar to computers, that behavior is predictable. They are programmed to behave a certain way or process outcomes based on different scenarios or paths. As humans, though, we can be a bridge to others in a world that is becoming increasingly more disconnected. Next slide, please. So the first bullet here, if I know more about me than you know about yourself, I can control the communication. Can be also said about technology today. We have data analytics, smart TVs, cell phones. Have you ever been talking with someone in your living room when an ad pops up on your TV or social media account that is related to your conversation? Second bullet, if I know more about me and know more about you than you know about yourself, I can control you. Technology and predictive modeling. From a human perspective, behaviors are predictable. So we want to learn self-awareness to be able to recognize behavior patterns in others, to be able to influence positively. And that gives you the silver bullet at work where when you are able to influence positively in a meeting, you can bring people you can influence to bring stakeholders to a win-win situation. You can navigate snarly decisions at work, help maintain peace within your family setting, to coexist with neighbors, or here's a big one, to create community. people and community in all aspects of life. So the last bullet here, a willingness to collaborate, needs to be present. All participants must have a willingness to engage for the common good. For human beings are not like technology where they are programmed for a specific outcome. Next slide, please. So this is the basic content. The next few slides are the basic content of the presentation. Depending on the time and how much we have left, I'll pace myself with the speed with which I go through these. Some of you may have heard my previous presentations and you've heard some of this material, but the key here is relating it to everything that I just prepared in kind of an elongated introduction, because it matters and it makes a difference. So with the DISC behavioral insights, we have D is the dominant personality, I is influence, S is steadiness, and C is conscientiousness. And you can see on the scale that the C's and the D's are more task and thinking oriented, and the S's and the I's are more feeling and relations oriented. The C and the S's are more introverted and passive, and the D's and the I's are more extroverted and active. There is no right or wrong. Everybody is a blend of all of these styles. What's important through DISC assessment to determine is which is your primary style and what is your secondary or backup style. Or said another way, what is your natural style and what is your style under pressure? Because it does make a difference. And once someone becomes very skilled at being self-aware, they can start becoming other-aware, and learning then to basically adapt to other people's styles in whatever relationship they're in, including in a work meeting, where they can help walk alongside someone or basically be the Switzerland and neutralize a situation for a more favorable outcome than maybe someone would who is not self-aware and cannot identify how other people respond. And I'm saying deliberately the word respond and not react because that's important. Next slide, please. So conscientiousness. I don't want to go ahead and read this listing to you, but I'm going to pause so that you can read the descriptors for a person with the style of conscientiousness. What's the value to the team of someone who is a high C? They maintain high standards. They're steady. They bring clarity. They get information. They really become the anchor maybe of the team, and they are adept at problem solving. But when they become stressed, they can become pessimistic, picky, fussy, overly critical. Anybody worked with anybody like that? Now, when we're dealing with computers, we don't have to worry about those stressors and the angst of someone who's being overly fussy or critical. But at the same time, we're not going to have someone who has the ability to critically think. And what we want to also be aware of here is that, have you ever worked with someone who is an emotional environment and is just very anxiety prone, and it's hard to calm them down because they have to be the best at what they do and they won't accept anything less? It's because the underlying emotion there is one of fear, and that person is probably a high C. So the ideal environment for someone that's a high C is a familiar work environment where they do have a feeling of community, where they have a close relationship with a small group, where they work in a specialized area, and they are most likely critical thinkers. Next slide, please. The S, or steadiness. These folks are very friendly. They are good listeners. They are relaxed, sincere, stable. They're team players. And in understanding they tend to be empathetic, so the very opposite of what a processed computer would be outputting. They are dependable team players. They work for a leader and a cause. They are patient and empathetic, and don't we need empaths in today's world where there's more and more disconnection? They typically are logical, stepwise thinkers, and they are service-oriented. So actually, some of our S's may be people who are working in the medical field, maybe nurses. They're service-oriented, or people who volunteer. They're stable and predictable, or they like working in the ideal environment for them is to be stable and predictable, yet an environment that allows time for change. They appreciate long-term work relationships. They don't like conflict, and they like freedom from restrictive rules. The emotion of the high C is non-emotional. So while they are friendly and good listeners and relaxed, they tend to wear a mask that is non-emotional. So you might have to peel back the covers a little bit to really get to know who they are behind the mask. Next slide, please. The dominant person, so your CEOs, those top-level executives that are competitive, they're decisive, they're direct, yet they're innovative, they're problem solvers, they're results-oriented, don't get in their way. They'll think of the strategy and then dump the tactical execution to the rest of the team. They're self-starters. They're bottom-line organizers, they're forward-thinking, they are challenge-oriented, they initiate activity, they never sit down, they're innovative. These are the people that drive organizations. They like environments where they have freedom from controls, supervision, and details. They're innovative and futuristic. They like a forum where they can express their ideas. These are the people maybe that use their hands to talk. They don't like routine work, and they love working with challenges and exploiting opportunities. But under stress, man, they can be demanding, aggressive, egotistical. Have you ever worked with anybody like that? The emotion of the high D is they don't get their way and they get angry. As I said before, there's no one perfect style, and there's no one style that is more valuable to an organization. All of these melded together create diversity and help move a team or an organization forward. So lastly, we have I, the influencer. These people are charming, they're confident, they're convincing, they're enthusiastic. These can be your team cheerleaders. Many project managers have a high I. They're persuasive, they're sociable, they build trust. They're optimistic and enthusiastic, they are creative problem solvers, they motivate others toward goals, they're team players, and they help to negotiate conflict. The emotion of the high I, not surprisingly, is optimism. Their possible limitations are inattentive to detail. Project manager or scrum master, as the orchestra leader, doesn't have to pay attention to detail. Maybe at the beginning of the project as they're identifying the project plan and having to put financials together. But once that team is formed and it's humming along, they manage stakeholders. And it's the other people on the team with the other areas of expertise that have to pay attention to the detail. The orchestra leader only has to understand the component parts and how it all comes together in the overall musical score. Another possible limitation is that they trust people indiscriminately, and they can be situational listeners. Next slide, please. So the bottom line to this is there's no one-size-fits-all rule. As people, human to human, we need to learn to adapt situationally, and other people. And even two people who understand each other's styles, husband and wife, brother and sister, depending on the environment, depending on what's happened that day, people, again, can flex from their primary to their secondary styles, be in good moods, be in bad moods for various reasons, and it's all about accepting one another and learning to adapt to their styles. Next slide, please. So if all of us become more self-aware, we gain a better understanding of how our words and behavior impact others. Not just how about other people make us feel, but how are we making other people feel when we react or we don't respond in a certain way, or at all. We can also become adept at being other-aware, which helps us to influence in all relationships. Often we want to meet someone where they are in order to move the conversation to a mutually beneficial place. The key to getting to know someone and also to negotiating to that win-win position. So Dr. Roosevelt Thomas said, if managers understand the behavioral style and values of the people they manage, and if they manage to those differences, diversity takes care of itself. Next slide, please. So these next few slides are on adapting your style depending on whether you're the C, the D, the S, or the I communication style. When communicating with a person who is dependent, neat, conservative, a perfectionist, careful, and compliant, make sure to prepare your case in advance. Stick to business, be accurate, and realistic. And the things that will create tension or dissatisfaction are being casual, giddy, informal, being loud, pushing too hard or being unrealistic with deadlines, being disorganized or messy. So your C personality likes order. When communicating with a dominant communication style, this person is ambitious, forceful, decisive, strong-willed, independent, and goal-oriented, and you need to be clear, specific, brief, and to the point. Have your case prepared well in advance and be well organized, and just stick to business. What will create tension or dissatisfaction in that relationship is talking about things that are not relevant to the issue, leaving issues or leaving loopholes or being vague, or appearing disorganized. Because this person is thinking ahead of where most likely thinking ahead of where you are in the conversation and trying to close this deal so that they're moving on to, in their mind, bigger and better things. They're conquering the world. So when communicating with one of the other four styles, you want to check for signals they may be giving you showing signs of engagement or disinterest. Next slide, please. So the S, the steady folks. These folks are patient, predictable, reliable, relaxed, and modest. You want to begin with a personal compliment just to break the ice, because they're not going to be so much fact-based as they want to be creating that relationship and having it be two-way. Present your case softly and non-threateningly, and ask questions to draw out their opinions, because these are people that relationship matters. Factors that will create tension or dissatisfaction are rushing headlong into business. This is the opposite of that dominant communication style. Being domineering or demanding and forcing them to respond quickly to your objectives. These are the resources that like to ponder, they like to think about something before they can make a decision. They want to be fact gathering. They want to make sure they have their ducks in a row. This might be a business analyst, and they're good at what they do because part of their innate humanness is having a steady communication style. So the I, the influencers, these are most likely people who are magnetic, enthusiastic, friendly, demonstrative, possibly political. These might be a sales personality. They provide a warm and friendly environment. They don't deal with a lot of details, so you want to put them in writing. They ask feeling questions to draw out opinions and comments. And factors that will create tension or dissatisfaction are being too cold or tight-lipped, trying to control the situation, or driving on facts and figures, alternative, or abstractions. Next slide, please. So the human factor in a technological world, it's a natural phenomenon. Look at that bright sunny picture on the upper left-hand side. Look at the sun on the lower left-hand or the lower right-hand picture where it's coming up between the mountain ranges, and just how beautiful it is with the blue in the background, and it looks like there's water behind that mountain peak. We want to connect in relationship and encourage one another. To be aware, to be able to meet others where they are, and be able to influence encourages collaboration. Lead by example, the golden rule. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you, and actively listen. See beauty in nature and in just the miracle of being human, and leverage that to influence positively for better outcomes. Next slide, please. So when we say let's connect, we want to leverage technology to enhance, and that's a key word, enhance, the human experience, but not to displace interaction with others. Let's not hide behind technological walls, and let's not avoid human interaction. Let's not assume that technology's got this. Our future depends on our human ability to navigate ambiguity and complexity, to be able to think critically, to understand and act on what is right and what is wrong. We are the only connection we have to each other, and it is so very important to be in and to build relationships. The human factor is critical to the fourth industrial revolution, the world of AI. The survival, frankly, of the human species depends on it. So I'll just ask you to look at that top line of smiley emoticons, which you probably see, no exaggeration, 100 times a day on team chats, versus those smiling human pictures and the beautiful faces that are below those emoticons. I mean, that little boy on the left-hand side, the smile is not only in his smile and his mouth, but look at those bright eyes. The girl in the middle, I mean, it's just a relax. I'm feeling secure. I'm enjoying myself. I'm relaxed. The elderly man, just what a pleasant picture. And then the child on the right-hand side, look at those sunglasses with that smile like, oh, you know, come get me. Next slide, please. So as we pass the torch, like we're watching the Olympic Games right now and seeing the world come together in competition. In the spirit of those Olympic Games, human to human, we are passing the torch from one person to another, one country to another, and around the world. Connecting with one another is at the core of being relational and to being able to creatively navigate complexity, resolve issues, and deliver projects. Technology and the world of AI have never and can never possess those attributes. So let's connect. In a world heavily invested in technology, the human factor is ever so critical to human satisfaction. We need to leverage it to evolve as a species and to deliver complex project work. Susan, that's the end of today's presentation.
So thank you so much, Deb, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you all, and have a great day.